Hello, and welcome to Metachemistry. This is episode 112, and we're back covering another ITS satellite event. This time it is Battle by the Beach, held in California, and we have another guest on for a Winner Circle episode. So that entails is basically we have the winner of the event come on and kind of talk about what their prep looked like going into the event, things they expected, things that they might have learned during their games, and generally see if we can find what led them to victory. Today, we have Azoka, Derrek, and myself. Derrek, welcome on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And congratulations for the satellite win. It's super exciting.
Thanks. It was a really good time. A lot of good people and a lot of good opponents.
Awesome. Yeah, always a good thing to hear. So, what we'll want to do is let our listeners kind of know who you are, and we'll start getting into the games and stuff. But before we dive in too far, we want to give a quick shout out to Mo Games, sponsor of Metachemistry, and you can find them over at mo-games.com. And as part of their sponsorship, any of our paid patrons get a 10% off discount code to that store. And if you're part of our Discord, whether you're a patron member or not, then we raffle off a $4 coupon code each month just for being part of our community to anyone who's in the US where most ships. Because what's better than games? Mo Games. So, Derrek, I know that we've actually had the chance to play, at least on one occasion. I think it's just been the one time. It was Krug a couple years ago, right?
Yeah. I think it was a Krug, the last Krug, the 2 Krugs ago.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, it was it was a crazy game for sure. But I was really excited to hear that you did well at Battle by the Beach. So that's super exciting. For our members who may not have had the chance to meet you, would you kind of talk a little bit about your miniature gaming journey and what that's kind of looked like up to this point?
Sure. I think like many of our players, I started with 40K. Oof, that was quite right around high school. I started playing 40K and played that for, I'd say that and mixed that with Magic. I'd played that for about 10 years. The scene, it was pretty consistent, but eventually it got kind of stale, changing around. You'd have to change around armies and things like that. So I switched over to a game called Malifaux, which I played for quite some time.
So beautiful.
It was a good time. I think it was second edition was the most recent, was the not the most recent edition, but the edition before that. And I played pretty much up until the edition change, and then my friends while I was playing Malifaux tried to get me into Infinity, but that was N3. And I had 3 big issues with it. It was the nested rules. I really wanted to play heavy infantry, and at the time, heavy infantry weren't really well regarded. And I had some trauma with metal models and a lot of chipping.
Sure.
But with the edition change, they eliminated 2 of those 3 things, and I was like, well, I guess I'm eating my words. So with the switch over to N4, I joined about a month later. I usually play the newest faction, and also it really played into what I was after. But I picked up a little bit of O12 at the time. But my friends were really playing into Haqqislam, and I really enjoyed the theme of it. So I had a little bit of O12, but I started off with Haqqislam.
Nice.
Vanilla or one of their sectorials?
I started with Assassins and kind of grew from there. I went into Vanilla. I did a little bit of Rama and a QK. And basically, I went into I would try to spread out, diversify among as much of it as possible.
For sure.
And then once I kind of hit a wall in Vanilla, I did the full switch to O12.
Gotcha. Yeah, and O12 is what I remember you playing most. So has that been fairly consistent for you since that switch over?
Yeah, I've played some kind of variation of O12 ever since.
I know Derek and I have played 3 games in our history and played O12 all 3 games, so seems to hold up to par there.
Yeah, O12 is a really cool faction.
Yeah, it kind of plays into what I really value in any kind of faction is that it's not necessarily the best at any particular faction, but it is kind of second best at everything.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
What faction did you play in Malifaux? Just to pique my curiosity, as I've got a little history with it.
I played 10 Thunders, which very
Nice.
similar to O12. It kind of feeds into the concept of I really like kind of drawing from other factions and not necessarily be the best at it, but leveraging the second best part of it.
Yeah. And O12 does that so well. Do you have a favorite unit in O12?
I do. It's kind of oscillates between the Beast Hunter, which is not necessarily O12.
Shame. You're getting much shame from Devin.
I'm sitting here judging silently.
Yeah, right. And then the Nightshade.
Yeah, the Nightshade's super cool.
Yeah.
Nightshade is pretty rad.
Yeah, it hits all the marks. It's a ninja, which is great. It's a hacker, which I very value, and it's super versatile. So I really enjoyed using it.
Yeah, actually, I played a Nightshade for the first time, like, I don't know, a week or two ago. It was a lot of fun. They're just so mobile right now, because, anything with super jump is. But when you have a marker state on top of that, and one that's not easy to punch through, you can get really far.
Very good. Very good.
Oh, they have multiple Marco
Mhm.
states, so you can ignore mines and stuff like that.
Yup. Which is amazing. And there's a reason that they got rid of Norkius's marker state availability very recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very good.
So how long would you say you've been playing Infinity on a regular basis?
I'd say pretty consistently for the last 4 years. I kind of started right before the pandemic, and I wasn't able to be perfectly consistent during the pandemic, but we had kind of a speakeasy group of players that would occasionally meet up like every other week. So I was able to meet pretty consistently for that. And then as soon as we got out of the COVID restrictions, I've been pretty consistent since then.
Nice.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, getting games was definitely tricky if you weren't using Tabletop Simulator or similar.
I'm still trying to figure out Tabletop Simulator. It's definitely it feels very different from playing in person.
I agree. Yeah. I feel like it's better than no Infinity,
For sure.
but it is not as good as playing Infinity.
Mhm.
But I know some people make a lot of use out of it. We had Jake or Lobo on just recently who was talking about how he's gotten, as of like a month or so ago, he had gotten in 50 games of N5 already. And a lot of that was because of Tabletop Simulator. And I was just blown away.
Oh,
Yeah, it's crazy.
that's so many games.
So these days, about how often would you say that you play? It sounds like maybe weekly?
Yeah, usually about weekly. Sometimes I can get 2 a week. It's kind of the Bay Area is a pretty nice place in that we have several pockets that are roughly about a 30-minute drive from me in any direction.
Okay.
So I can go to Santa Clara or Fremont relatively easily. And they all have some overlap when players, but they have all specifically scheduled their times to be different days of the week. So I can usually get something pretty solid.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Goes a long way for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's something to be said about being about 30 minutes away from everything. I would love to come up on a Thursday and play with Devin, but it's a 50-minute to an hour and a half drive from where I work is just
It's brutal.
ugh.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. I love Infinity and I love hanging out with you guys, but I hate traffic a little bit more.
I understand.
I feel you.
Yeah, it's a lot of time and a lot of stress.
Yeah.
As far as the changeover in edition, I feel like we're still very early in N5 at this point. We're about 4 months in, maybe a little less.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's kind of stood out to you? Any major changes that you've made yourself or seen in games that you've been playing over the last several months that kind of caught your interest, or observations you might want to share in that regard?
At the beginning of the edition, I noted the increase in aggression. And I think what the meta has done is done almost a complete 180 of
Mhm.
forcing the defense. And defense became more of a priority than offense in many regards. I noticed initially there was a lot of, not controversy, but of high opinions of speedball. And
Mhm.
I've seen that
Yeah.
wane considerably. I think it's a good tool and a super versatile tool, but I don't think it's I don't think it's a particularly dominating factor. I think one of the best uses for it is almost as a list filler when you're
Yeah.
building a list. If you have something that you're missing, it will compensate for it.
Mhm.
I think it was a good addition, especially for that. Um, Super jump has been scary, but I think it's more limited. It's more map dependent, I've noticed.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some very flat tables, and super jump just kind of dominated those. But when you have to go in a straight line, it wasn't too bad. I have seen a lot of turrets though, and that's been a hindrance.
When you say you've seen a lot of turrets, do you mean like a couple of oddball one-shot turrets, like they just spend one order on their mechanic or something, they just lay a turret, or are you talking like people have put multiple turrets placing units in their lists and are going for the baggage refueling?
I would say more the former. They'll have only one engineer, but it'll be
In group 2.
in group two. Yeah, right. They'll use the engineer option. They'll put it down, and they're going to create a major hindrance with that. It's not as
Yeah.
they're not dropping like 16 turrets, but if you see a turret a turn, that's more of a hindrance than
Still pretty good.
Yeah, it's still real good. That's one of the things that I've been seeing a lot lately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of been my experience as well as I've gotten in more games lately is flashing of turrets. Like the kind of Kestrel Boogeyman 5 mine-laying turrets, huddled around a mule bot hasn't really happened except for one particular player in our meta.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like generally it's just kind of an extra outlet for, like Azoka was saying, those group 2 orders, which, is a pretty reasonable way to go. Like that's a pretty
Yeah.
effectual thing to have if you don't have something else to utilize those orders anyway. And it's a good option.
I've been dipping my toes in every faction that I have at the moment because N5 has so much fun stuff that's available. So I think I've played a different faction every week since Salt Lake, and it's been a lot of
Yeah.
But in MO specifically, I will put a Evo bot in group 2 for firewall or what have you. And I've definitely considered putting in the machinist into group 2 to just be like, here's a turret, deal with it. It's it's an order that I wasn't going to do anything with anyways, so it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Right?
Have you been playing with the Seraph?
No, I haven't touched the Seraph yet.
Oh.
Yeah, I know it's good.
Wild.
I know it's good, but I'm weird and I like to play odd stuff. Although I guess when I talk about MO, odd stuff being the Crux Knight isn't very weird, so I digress. I do mean to say that I haven't seen many turrets as much as you guys have, like even in just normal one-off, but I did see one at Salt Lake, and every time I looked at the table at that corner, I was like, oh, I have to drop a drop troop, and this is annoying.
Yep.
Yeah. I even have seen people just throw them out in the middle. It's been that 2 armor kind of throws me off a lot more than I would expect.
Perimeter has to go. If I were to make a change, I would take off perimeter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe add a little.
That is a severe reduction in utility, though.
Yeah. Yes, I know what I'm saying.
I think they would need something else to compensate at that point. I do think that they could use a little tap downward, but I think that is a pretty massive nerf to turrets.
Yeah.
I don't have any particular suggestions offhand, except maybe like some way to cap the maximum turrets at a time, but that would require new rules to accommodate. But something like that, because I think that, placing it in base contact leaves you with pretty few options for something that generally is not moving forward.
I think any summoning mechanic is going to be particularly coming from Malifaux. I think any summoning mechanic is going to be particularly powerful. So just putting something down that doesn't have any cost quote unquote, has its own value all by itself.
Yeah,
that's true. I don't think that it would remove them from play, but I think that they would be significantly less used. I think there'd be a pretty rare occurrence at that point.
Yeah. Well, regardless of that, what overall, since you started with N4 into the N5 change, how do you rate the N5 change? And N5 is an addition.
I think it's fantastic. I think the factions have, while the changes have not all been evenly distributed, the changes in factions have been very interesting in their identification.
Yeah.
A lot of the tools have moved around considerably, so I'm seeing a lot more units. I'm seeing different play styles grow from each individual faction, and the kind of rock paper scissory effect of list building has become significantly more prominent, which some people like, and I am among them. But I also can understand why people want that kind of homogenization a little bit more. But I like it. With overall changes, been really good.
Yeah, I've been pretty happy with the changeover too, largely for similar reasons. I think the fire team changes really opened up list building quite a bit and are making room for people to choose things that they might not otherwise be interested in playing because they don't
Yeah.
go in a given fire team.
Yeah, yeah, and also the kind of the changeover to, I want to say, call it the O12 template of sectorials not having their own special thing. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like that it's a nice way to make sectorals interesting and vanilla can still get kind of a cherry picked best in slot sort of units, but they don't get
Right.
everything, which I generally appreciate.
Derrek, I got a question for you.
Hmm.
You are a satellite winner. Congrats. Would you say that the amount of practice that you've been getting, one game a week, sometimes 2 games a week, how would you rate that on importance of being able to take a large 5-round tournament?
It is the most critical aspect.
Yeah.
Getting repetition and also diversity has been pretty critical to my gameplay, and the ability to go through 5 rounds is learning all the permutations has been a big deal, and also it reduces your mental load as over 5 rounds.
I completely agree. But good to hear a mirrored opinion.
Speaking of the Battle by the Beach satellite, what did the event look like? You want to go over like when it took place, the mission lineup, and any kind of extra flair or changes or extras that were used?
Sure. It happened at the end of February. It was at a place called Hotel Paradox in Santa Cruz. It's a fantastic venue. If you ever get the chance, check it out. It's dog friendly if you have dogs.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Yeah, it's super awesome. There's the showrunner who happens to be Mo Games
Right.
is set up his own special menu. We had infinity themed breakfast and lunch and dinner. So that was really fun.
That's fun.
It was great. The venue was beautiful. The tournament was kind of unique in the fact that it had 3 objective room missions.
So is that Panic Room, Armory, and Last Lodge?
Yeah. So you knew kind of what the map was going to look like ahead of time, which was pretty critical to my list building design. And then he also posted a highly classified with specific objectives,
Oh.
which was pretty interesting.
Oh, sure. So they were just pre-drawn.
Yeah. So you kind of had to build for that. You were able to skew into the highly classified objectives, but they were still very unique. So you had to build into it while also building into the objective rooms, which is usually king of the hill.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm kind of torn on the pre-drawn, highly classified setup because on the one hand, it's nice that everyone is going for the same thing, but I also feel like part of the challenge of highly classified is being flexible enough to accomplish whatever happens to get drawn.
Mm.
I like them both.
I like them both for both reasons. Is the forced variety is nice, but also some factions just can't do it. I've seen that some factions need to just skew into it. So the ability
Mhm.
to,
What faction would you comes to mind that can't or has a hard time with it?
I would say mostly Ariadne's.
Yeah.
You'd have to build into the hacking, right? And then the skirmishy lists, like the skirmishy factions, like Shaz, would have to build into specific things. You can take, I think, the Caliban, but you'd have to know if you're going to have an engineer or not. So you can lose out on considerable points just from that.
Sure.
So knowing ahead of time helps them a lot.
Yeah, I could certainly see that. And then, so what did that leave for the final match?
The final match was last launch. So with the rounds were Armory, Panic Room, Highly Classified, Evacuation was round 4, and then the last one was last launch.
Gotcha. Do you want to go over a little bit of your kind of prep and rationale with what you ended up bringing? You can go over your lists entirely if you'd like, or if you just want to kind of hit the high points, whatever feels best to you.
So I took 2 lists. The main differences being I took a Prime in one list and then Hippolyta, a Kluger, and a Nimrod in the other. Those are the big 2 differences. The mindset behind it was I've been playing a lot of vanilla lately, and I really wanted to play vanilla. But with the Armory in the docket, I didn't have a lot of size 2 models. So that kind of eliminated vanilla from the equation. Whenever I played Starmada looks for lots of long lanes, which knowing that there was going to be a big old building in the middle was a huge hindrance for that. So I kind of defaulted to the durable, close range, knife fighty faction of Torchlight and wanted to lean into the requirements of each mission, which was size 2, essential personnel, so NCO, characters, and then for highly classified, one of the big parts was you wanted a solid engineer, which both the Kluger and the Lambda could provide. And so with that in mind, I leaned into those components and came up with pretty straightforward lists that 90% composed a Beast Hunter, Moonrakers, one Fuzzbot, a Stormbot, and then a Wave Rider. And then I would switch between a Silver Star with a Tin Bot and the Hellblazer.
Not the Prime, right?
The Prime I took in the Hellblazer list, and then I took the Nimrod Kluger Harris in the other one.
And the Hellblazer, how's that felt to you? I know that I've had a handful of players kind of talk about that style of unit and generally being a lot less inclined to take limited cover troops like that, but how was your experience with the Hellblazer?
It was, I'm going to say fine. I think it's a good unit if you that kind of can break away from the rest of the list if you want to go in deep. But I'd use it more as an ARO piece than I have anything else.
Sure, I could see that.
Yeah, and I just kind of let it tank. I also took the Lambda with the deployable cover.
That's what I was thinking about. Yep. He's the +6 since you're not getting the penalty anyway.
Exactly. And so it was it survived a little bit longer for that, but that only came up like once or twice.
Gotcha. Seems like a fun combination.
Yeah, it really feeds into itself. I think the edition change has made it a little bit more synergistic. When I played it in N5, it felt very disjointed, and I felt as though I didn't have enough of tools or orders or anything. And then the transition over to N5 has made it a little bit cleaner for me to play.
Nice.
Sure.
How have you liked the deployable cover option?
I think that it has value in more open maps and then for the Tonko style units, but I mainly use it as a list filler, but it's a very convenient list filler.
Yeah. Cool.
That should have the perimeter. If that had perimeter, I'd be very happy.
That would be really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because it doesn't feel like, especially for almost every engineer in the game, it's mutually exclusive with a turret. There are a couple examples. Yay, soft attacks. But otherwise, you pretty much have to choose between them, and it feels far less appealing. Other than, maybe you just need to get that extra, point or two when you can't afford it to bring the turret, for example.
That's so funny. I did not know that the deployable cover was not perimeter, and I totally used it as perimeter. Oops.
You cheater.
Yeah. Important rules. This is why you play a lot. And this is why when somebody says they know the rule, just be like, hey, let's look it up just to be sure. It's still very new.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What do we start with?
Armory.
How did that go?
That was pretty straightforward. It was against a newer to me Bakunin player. I have several Nomad players around my meta, so playing into that wasn't too bad. So I took Torchlight into it, and specifically for the objective room missions, because they're much more durable and can play into a lot more wounds. But playing into I had a lot of practice, so I was able to pin down his hacker units and clear out the room pretty easily.
It sounded like your round one was fairly straightforward, but any particular lessons or interesting moments that kind of stood out to you during that match?
That one was pretty straightforward, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, fair enough. So then round two, what did that look like?
Round two was Panic Room, and that was a much closer game. It was against Dashat.
Mm-hmm.
The key things is that he had taken a Magariba Guard and McMurrow, which for Panic Room is pretty ideal. McMurrow is a super durable character, and the Magariba Guard is very good at kind of ignoring all of the efforts of Torchlight to remove it. It was very close. The biggest fights there were I threw Hippolyta in the middle, and I hoped and prayed.
Prayers do a lot.
I would every chance I get, I would throw smoke and then tie her up with a unit, so he'd have to shoot him randomly. So it caused him a lot of problems there. He was really good at staging his attack pieces and keeping the Magariba Guard away from any kind of repeaters. So he would remove my left flank while I was trying to run up to the objective room, and then while I was basically pummeling scrubs and while everything was dying around it.
Nice. You said he staged his attack pieces. Do you mean like layered pieces so you had to go through one to get to the other?
He came in with his NCO units and was able to put the lower cost units in initially, and then he followed up with the Terracotta Warriors to hit my left flank, or to hit my right flank. Meanwhile, he was kind of destroying my left flank with the Magariba Guard.
Gotcha.
So in the end, I got away with a 6-5 victory, but it
really
was
tight.
But yeah, it was very tight. He pretty much decimated me as far as victory points go, but I was able to score all of the essential personnels and score the end of the round by going second. So I was able to control that in that way.
Yeah, it sounds like that's really, really close in that case. So
yeah,
which is always fun.
Yeah,
right.
But yeah, I think it's funny that Magaribas can get in the Panic Room now, right? Because they're wide gates on that mission.
They can. That's how we took it at the end of the round. It was really bloody and there was a lot of bodies, so he couldn't do it the first two rounds. But eventually, we cleared it up enough that he kind of just got back up and started saying "haha," and I just couldn't remove it. It was just too big. It was too big, and I couldn't hack it. And yeah. The big takeaway from that is Torchlight doesn't have a lot of armor penetration.
Yep.
It has a lot of armor itself, but it doesn't have a lot of ways of removing tag level defense very easily.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of your better options end up being non-lethal means, like para weapons or EM weapons, which just doesn't quite cut it.
Yeah.
Not for that kind of mission.
No, yeah, keeping it out was kind of difficult. It was kind of rough, honestly. I really enjoy the improvement to martial arts. That's been very helpful in the change. And it's been really fun. The loss of templates has allowed martial arts to thrive, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think it's a really healthy change for the game to have so many fewer direct templates lying around. Like, they're still present, but not nearly as ubiquitous as they were, which is great. You finished off day one with...
Last round was highly classified, and that was against Shinden Butai. This was kind of...
Ooh.
Yeah. This ended up an 8-4 match, but it was much closer than that score would belie. Yeah. The player was kind of one of my senseis. He had taught me. He had kind of beat me down early on in the when I was learning. So it was kind of the Obi-Wan Darth Vader thing of I've become the master now.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really so we took a double Hatamoto list, which was nasty.
Chef's kiss.
He took I think the Red Fury and then also a Plasma.
The Red Fury, nice.
Yeah. So we took a Plasma and a Red Fury, so it was pretty good. I took my Prime list, and as it turns out, a Prime at that 16-inch range does not shoot as well as you would hope. So that went down early.
Oh no.
Yeah. But I had backup plans. He played very aggressively, which prevented me from advancing in any way to get to his HVTs and score any points. And he eventually scored his personal objective, so he was up by 3. And the biggest issue there was he had basically pinned me in my deployment zone, and I was able to score basically 3 classifieds in the last minute by shooting a picture and getting designated target, and then scoring a last minute audible by moving my chain of command into engagement with one of his downed bodies. So
Nice.
yeah, so Shinibutai, pretty scary, is what I learned from that one.
Yeah. Have you played much Shinden Butai yet in N5?
No, just I played U, which was the vanilla option, and then I haven't played a lot. I played basically at the very beginning of the edition when everybody was learning it, and then I played the 2 here, and that was really my experience with those lists. But we played a bunch of Oban in Sin City.
Yes, there was a lot of JSA happening in Sin City.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like Shinin Butai hasn't been quite as well received as the other portions of JSA. I think they're just trickier to unlock that potential, but they seem to have a lot of really interesting tools. It's just a matter of getting them all locked into a working machine together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be.
I would classify them as like a medium infantry faction, so lots of strong specialists, but that mid-range cost, so you have to figure out which parts you're putting in.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who was your opponent on round 3, if you don't mind me asking? Your sensei. Vanderban.
Yeah.
I know the name, so I'm pretty sure I've seen him at a tourney, but I'm not picturing it. Have him come to the Krug.
Yeah. I'm pretty certain he's been a few times. You'll know him when you see him.
Was he in Sin City?
Yeah.
Did he played Assassins?
He was playing Oban.
Oban.
Yeah.
What the heck? Okay. Anyways.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, day 2 comes around and round 4.
Yeah. So this was a fun one. So I had been playing a bunch of evacuation up to this point because I had not played without this tournament. I would not have cared about the changeover, but a lot of the commentary was that it's a very low scoring mission, which was surprising to me because I had played it like 3 times before, been able to score pretty high. But as it turns out, when your opponent is very aggressive and you have to fight him off with a stick, that is not the way that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was my second round of Shinden Butai against Prince of Pizza. And this was a really tight game for the same reasons of very aggressive Hatamoto, again, Red Fury plus Plasma.
Oh, another double.
Yeah. This time I actually killed them, but he positioned them in a way that they were staggered on my right side and his left flank. Because you can't score the first round, he took first. He basically threw the Hatamotos up in the middle and killed all of my right side defenses, and then put one of the Hatamotos in my deployment zone, so I had to fight it up close, which is real scary.
Where they want to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, which is exactly where they want to be, especially since they don't really care about cover. As long as I don't shoot him in the back, he's in a good spot.
Yeah.
It was unideal, to be certain.
No kidding.
He do them with Jizamurai.
Okay.
He left the Jizamurai in the middle so that it could pick up HVTs for later
Yeah.
and the civilians for later. But he had managed to throw them up and basically put them in a situation where if I don't fight them, I lose. That was rough, I gotta say. But that was basically my entire first turn, was me fighting off the Hatamoto and then figuring out how to get out of my deployment zone from there with all of those Kyojin killers and
Yeah.
yeah. And what was the other one? The other Beast Hunteria thing.
Raiden.
So yeah.
Oh. No, not the Raiden. The Yamabushi, I believe.
Yeah. So he took double Yamabushi, double Kyojins, and he was just yeah.
What a menace.
It was a list after my own heart of camo and
Come at me.
death and destruction. I appreciated it to no end. It was just me basically trying to be like, all right, well, if I move, I die. But if you move, if you move, we're both kind of doomed. So how do we deal with this? I ended up spending my entire second turn basically putting down mines, which works pretty well, as a matter of fact, against a bunch of ninjas. He had the ninja killer hacker, and then he also had the character ninja.
Saito?
Saito.
Saito.
Yeah, he had Saito on each of the objectives, just
Oh,
ready
jeez.
to. So me putting down mines was incidentally very valuable, and so that was kind of nice for me, preventing any attacks on my HVTs. But he basically came up with the Yamabushi, and the Yamabushi cleared all the mines, and then I was able to fend off Saito because he just from lack of orders, and the Strider just managed to pop in. No, I'm sorry. The Kluger managed to pick up one of the civilians, and pop him and shoot him away.
Nice. What was the score at the end?
It was 3-1.
Yep. That's my experience with that mission.
Yeah,
Same,
yeah. That was
generally.
Yeah, that was a lot lower than Like I said, been playing it before, and it was pretty high. But when you see the aggression, I can understand. The lack of scoring on the first turn definitely skews it towards that. I think that if you were able to score the first round, you would see a little bit. You would be able to bump up those numbers.
I agree.
Yeah, that's probably true. Though I wonder if that would make going first a much more potent advantage.
I think that makes sense, but that also leads into the map building philosophies of if you have to kind of you have to be able to defend it, because they all have to be separated, right? You can't score
Right.
on your own HVTs. If your maps aren't kind of super congested, it will help with that. Or if you kind of design your maps to basically clear away from those objectives, it allows a level of defense without necessarily skewing the entire game towards one initiative over the other.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I just know that not every table is set up quite that mindfully.
Mm.
As much as it might be nice, it can be hard to do.
It's really hard.
It is.
Even thinking about it when I'm setting up my table on how deliberate to be about placement of everything. Somebody plays on my table and I'm like, I didn't even think about that. So what can I do?
Yeah. The whole gamer mentality of how can I break this? That's fair.
Yeah, it'll happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So it sounds like there were a couple low medium scoring games, but how did your last match in round 5 look?
So my last match in round 5 was a significantly higher score. I was playing another local who was playing vanilla CA. His name is Ditclicks into last launch. And I didn't play him that much, but I knew his mentality, which helped a lot in my gameplay. I took my prime list, which allowed me to do a lot of counters to vanilla CA. I knew he was going to take Norkius because Norkius was the hotness. I knew he was going to take Tusser because Tusser is obscene. And he had specialized in the Overdrawn, the HRMC, the mini tag.
Yeah.
So I knew the kind of components of his list ahead of time, which helped a lot. And also, when I've been playing into last launch, there was a lot of the biggest issue with playing into rooms for me was that you can the specific ruling on this for the objective room missions is you can shoot through them, which was a big old problem for me.
Sure.
But since last launch has an objective in the middle, it was easier to hide, which was an issue that I had experienced before. So in this mission, the most critical aspect of it was deployment. I was able to put my Stormbot on a very high position, overwatching both objectives. And I knew it was too good to be true, and I made sure that that was the case. So I baited his Overdrawn to deploy in a certain direction, and that kind of solidified the pacing of the game. And that was kind of it. Is he would shoot a few shots at my Stormbot. I would make a few saves because I'm very confident in arm 3, and good 1.5 dice on 13s isn't too terrible. And then one of the things is that once his alpha had kind of fizzled, I was able to come in with the Nightshade and score with it and just run across the field with my bang bombs.
Sure. Yeah.
And he wasn't able to advance enough to score. Yeah.
Isn't it kind of crazy how much deployment matters for Infinity?
Yeah. The philosophy in my locals is it's not going to win you the game. Deployment's not going to win you the game, but it'll definitely lose you the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I too played a last launch at a local tournament recently, and I 100% lost because of deployment. So I agree with that sentiment wholeheartedly.
Yeah, it is quite impactful, to be sure.
How did you deal with Norkius? I guess is probably going to be a top question that everybody has here.
So this was more so a list building composition choice. He had decided to make Norkius his lieutenant, and that dealt with it itself in many ways because he didn't take he didn't have chain of command, and I had positioned a lot of my units to basically fight as specialists. He didn't have that many hit, like 3 or 4, but his mobile specialist was Norkius. And as long as I had the lane of which Norkius was approaching pinned down, even if I discovered him, he would be out in the open. So
yeah,
the dealing with Norkius was kind of more so he
was kind of too scared to use it or whatnot, or too locked down.
Yeah, he didn't want to advance with it too much, but he wanted to be mobile with it, so he wasn't able to basically unlock his full potential. He had played me with Norkius before, and it was the way I dealt with it before was basically combi rifles.
Yeah.
I mean, just throwing shots will do it.
Yeah, but that sucker lives forever.
Yeah. He can get carried away really easily. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense that would be kind of a rough go because that puts you into loss if you extract, right? I'm pretty sure it does.
Yeah.
So you want to wait until the last turn to do it, and things may have changed in that amount of time.
I totally support the this is my lieutenant, and I'm going to be aggressive with it, and I'm just going to go ham. I totally support that mentality. I don't know. Norkius just having NCO blanket on his kit makes me never interested in taking that. Maybe now because of the SWC change, but that's a bold choice for me to hear for your opponent.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by it too, but it made sense in that he's a very aggressive player and he has a lot of confidence in his he used to play Cosmo, so he was going for a lot of like those bear style effects.
Yeah.
He's big on murder, so maybe he thought he could clear it. He could clear me out and then be like, all right, well, Norcus is going to go off. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, and that sealed the deal. You did it. That was round 5, and you're able to take it with, what was the score?
10-1.
10-1. Very nice. Well, that's awesome. And sorry if I didn't hear it when you said it the first time, but how many players was this 5-round tournament?
We managed to get up to 42, I think.
Nice.
Solid.
Winning 5 games is hard, period.
Yeah.
Regardless of like who's there or how many players are there or whatever, winning 5 games is hard.
Yeah, it's definitely a test of endurance.
Mm-hmm. I have always, well, maybe not always, since I knew that this tournament was around, I have wanted to make it out there, but things haven't lined up, probably because of other tournaments being around is typically the reason. But I do hope to join you guys maybe next year or the year after. I know my fiance would love to join for, beach things, not tourney things.
Oh, yeah. Santa Cruz is a great place for significant others as well. One of my friends comes up from LA and he'll bring his wife or San Diego. He'll come up from San Diego and he'll be like, yeah, my wife loves it here. So she's like, when are we going to Battle by the Beach? And I'm like, sick.
Nice.
That's great.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's fun.
and we do have a beach. We do have a bonfire at the end of the first day. So if she likes beaches, and we have if she's a big foodie, we have a lot of food places right down the street.
Yeah, I'm a big foodie too. So I'm going to skip round 1 and I'm going to go eat breakfast.
Yeah.
Nah. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, is there anything else that you noticed like during this event that was either maybe significantly more prevalent than you might have thought going in, or things that kind of blindsided you that you didn't expect to see so much of, but there it was?
I saw a lot more CC than I was expecting. I had prepared for it, but only marginally. I also noticed that the lists tended to be much more min-maxy than I was expecting. Lots of tags and lower cost units that would feed into the higher value units.
Interesting. Okay.
That was surprising to me. And then repeat units like the Hatamoto, the repeat Hatamotos was not as surprising, just so much as it was one of the things that I noticed was very strong, and good redundancy was highly valued.
Yeah, redundancy is definitely a factor that will carry you pretty far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. And like that's one of the things that I have seen with Torchlight is that particularly in the long range gun department, in addition to kind of some of the AP troubles they can have, is that it feels like, you pretty much get 2 long range guns, and that's about what you can fit reasonably.
Yeah, I feel as though Torchlight has this problem of it has these required units in the Moonrakers and personally the Beast Hunters, which isn't a huge tax point wise, but it's a whole SWIC
On the Moonrakers, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the big cost there. You lose those kinds of parts, and you want fire teams because it's a fire team faction. It definitely wants to maximize your fire teams, and that is its own special list building requirement because you want a wave rider and give a mouse a cookie, right?
Sure.
You want a good wave rider. How do you get a good wave rider? You get another silver star. How do you get a good silver star fire team? You put a gun in there. So it kind of cascades into these very jointed units, and anytime you have a high cost unit that you need to switch around, it changes your list fundamentally.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I have like I said, I've been playing them a little bit lately, but they just haven't been quite scratching the itch I was kind of hoping for. I still enjoy them, but I feel like I'd rather play Starmada or Vanilla out of O12, generally speaking.
Yeah, Starmada has a lot more intuitive fire teams for sure. I really like the vanilla fire teams actually. That's one of the things that I've been exploring a lot lately is those the edition changeover has kind of made you think more so about how you're going to move your big guns, which you didn't really think about before when you were playing vanilla.
Yeah, I just really like several of the O12 vanilla exclusives, like Gammas and Omegas and Team Sirius, and yeah, there's a lot of really cool units that's the only place to get them. Razor's actually really interesting.
Yeah, the upgrade Trinity. Oh, so big. That's
Yeah,
been so big lately.
it's really nice.
Yeah. One of the other top placers also took the Razor mine layer with
Oh,
the
with monomines?
monofilament line.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
That's so crazy. And
You don't think about that.
no, it's just one of those things that you can just be like, your guy's dead randomly. And you're like, huh.
I have 3.
Well-
What do you mean? What?
Yeah, I mean, because it's
So-
hidden deployment, it's mine layer with infiltration, so it's just a camo marker in the midfield, which could be a number of things. Especially if you place it back just a little conservatively, you could bluff it as being, like a beast hunter or something,
Yeah.
and pretty easily
Dirty.
just get rid of stuff. Actually,
Yeah.
note. Can vanilla take beast hunters?
O12 doesn't
I'm
have
not sure.
beast hunters.
Oh,
They don't
never
have it
mind.
anymore. That was my biggest sadness in the edition change. Is I personally love beast hunters. Any kind of camo Panzerfaust, I will use in abundance. But that was my personal biggest loss.
Monsieur Delamy!
They are kind of in that ballpark, just way faster.
Yeah, yeah. You can it's a little bit more versatile for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been liking O12. Have you played into the Link? I still medium like there's so many tools for it. It's just kind of weird.
I have only played the links occasionally. I
Hmm.
like the sniper feels pretty reasonably costed for the package. Like it's one of those uh, hidden deployment snipers that is BS 13 instead of 12 or even 11 in some cases, which is really nice. And the plasma carbine is pretty cool, though.
Mm.
I feel like the killer hacker is definitely worth putting on the table.
I haven't touched the killer hacker.
Breaker
I will-
combis are sweet.
Hmm.
I will tell you that my first round at Salt Lake, Lynx bodied me. So I feel great about the Lynx.
Fair. Yeah, lots of really interesting stuff in O12 for sure.
Yeah, with this tournament over, I'm gonna switch back to it. I really enjoyed, like you said, the O12, the vanilla O12 exclusives. One of the lists that I'm kind of brewing up right now is a nearly all structure list, which kind of
sure.
skews it skews really heavily into the N5 philosophy of this kind of rock paper scissors thing. And I've noticed that it's one of those things that either, just like any skew list, it performs spectacularly until it hits its sweet spot. So I'm trying to figure out how to balance what the best tools are to kind of mitigate that. Or if it's killer hacking or having an alternative list that kind of avoids those. In which case, I'd have to learn all the other factions that will be able to repeat her into me. But
Sure.
that's been the fun one.
Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. I definitely, this is back in the dark ages when I ran a all remote plus Marut. It was vanilla Aleph at the time because OSS wasn't around yet. But yeah, it was a lot of fun having, like, here's all my robots.
Mm-hmm.
It memed too close to the sun and did not bring an engineer and could not nominate a new lieutenant when the Marut went down. So I just lived in a loss.
Oh.
It was a bad idea.
Interesting.
That's when you only got 2 orders when you were in a lost lieutenant turn. But it's
Oh,
gross.
interesting. That's
Yeah, it was long ago. We won't go into that. Don't want to confuse people with old rules, but it was gross.
I see.
With that, I think we're just about ready to transition to final thoughts, but I want to give a quick thank you to all of our patrons before we do so and say thank you for taking the time and the financial effort to sponsor the show. We really appreciate how that alleviates some of the recurring costs on us, and everything that you contribute goes right back into the show. We don't make money off of this by any stretch, but we really appreciate all of you who are willing to contribute in that way. And if any of you listening are interested in joining that, you can find us on patreon.com/metachemistry. And we offer a couple benefits just as our show of thanks for people who are willing to do that. And those take the form of exclusive channels on our Discord, early access to episodes, final voting and polls, and things along those lines. But even if that's not up your alley, feel free to join our Discord, which you can find in the show notes below. And it's freely available, other than those couple channels, for anyone who wants to talk more Infinity. If you don't have enough places to get your Infinity nerding out done, we'd love to have you. So you can talk about lists or painting or terrain or all kinds of good stuff, as we have people to go over any kind of interest you might have in that regard. And so, with that said, Derrek, I think the last thing that we probably want to wrap up on are, if you have aspiring players who are trying to take on a satellite and come out on top, what sort of advice would you be giving these players?
If you are an aspiring player trying to take on a major tournament, the first thing that you should look for is consistency of play, variety of play, variety of in a meta, and a friendly but competitive nature of the ability to talk to each other and say, this is what I saw, this was kind of my biggest concern, and this is what I didn't see you do. The ability to grow with each other is going to propel you faster than anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Feedback is important.
That is what I consider competitive play, not just, you are playing to win the game, of course. Like, that's obviously the goal, generally speaking. But I think that, there's many communities that still have the word competitive with kind of a stigma. But in my mind, it is that level of, I'm playing as well as I can and constantly trying to improve. And I think that makes a really big difference when you're trying to get those sorts of results. Some people will view that as, I'm going to try and win and make sure that I do, regardless of whether or not you have a good time. And that is totally different. That is not a competitive player in my mind. That is a very different thing, because going to various events, and I'm sure, Derrek and Azoka, you both go to far more events than I do, that almost everyone you play is incredibly friendly, even if they are trying to, do as well as they can. Like, there are very, very, very few bad actors in these events, which I'm extremely grateful for.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, totally agree.
I've had a fair share of engagements that are, I can definitely feel the level of competition of like, no, I'm going to get a leg up on you via rules, or I don't want to say bullying, but sort of like posturing is a better word for it. I've definitely seen it, but it's so few and far between that it isn't a concern of mine going into tourneys, which is, well, probably one of the biggest reasons why I travel to all these tourneys and go and play. Everybody's so much fun to hang out with and play with.
Absolutely. And I think for that reason, Infinity tournaments tend to be pretty accessible by and large. I see pretty commonly that there are new or relatively new players at events that are still having a good time. Like, they might not necessarily perform well on the leaderboard, but they're having a good time, and they usually learn quite a bit. throughout those games, and people are very friendly and helpful when trying to go through those games with these people
Yeah.
that are, trying to foster them in the game, which is great.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, Derrek, thank you again so much for taking the time to join us on the show. It's really good to talk to you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you guys again. Azoka, I'll probably see you at the next away tournament, so this will be a good. So we can talk.
Hopefully,
again.
we play again, and I can bring our score to a tie.
Yeah.
There we go.
We shall see.
Well, on behalf of Metachemistry, this has been Devin,
Azoka,
And Derrek. And that's the meta.